Jafar was shown to be obsessed with becoming the Sultan of Agrabah, and it's never been clearer why. Even though he might seem like yet another power-hungry villain that wanted to become a tyrant who ruled his people with a magical iron thumb, there was actually a lot more to his character that was revealed by Disney and Freeform's Once Upon a Time, and it even seems like his lust for power may have stemmed from some seriously dark daddy issues. Jafar was depicted as one of the most powerful people in Agrabah, and it seems like the apple didn't fall far from the tree, because his father was also a very powerful man, just in a slightly different way. Disney first introduced Jafar in the first Aladdin movie, and he has since become a fan-favorite villain, for good reason too. Though his lust for power may have seemed simple-minded, Jafar's powerful and hypnotic magic, plus the fact that he clearly didn't mind if people died on his way to becoming the Sultan, made him a force to be feared, even before he became a powerful genie. But it wasn't until Once Upon a Time delved further into Jafar's character that viewers learned where Jafar's true yearning for power and control came from, and with more of Jafar's origin revealed, it was clear that his childhood was filled with hardships that inevitably led him down the dark path that turned him into such a vile sorcerer. Jafar's first appearance in the Once Upon a Time franchise came from the spin-off series Once Upon a Time in Wonderland. He was introduced as a cohort of the Red Queen, who often pushed her to take the harsher route, such as pushing for prisoners' executions. But perhaps the most interesting part about Jafar's appearance and his role in Wonderland was learning about his backstory and who he was before his failed attempt at the throne. You see, according to the show, Jafar was not only a street rat like Aladdin was in the 1992 Disney film, but he also happened to be the son of Agrabah royalty. And though that might sound like the beginning of a decent upbringing, that sadly wasn't the case with Jafar. Instead, he was subjected to an unkind life that began to shape him into the bitter, power-obsessed villain that Disney depicted him as. It was a big shocker when Once Upon a Time in Wonderland revealed that Jafar was the illegitimate son of a sultan. But what's even more interesting is that he was the son of the Sultan of Agrabah itself. Of course, it's not the same sultan who fathered Jasmine and became hypnotized by Jafar in the film. Instead, it was his predecessor. But the key word to note there is illegitimate. The show didn't go into much detail surrounding Jafar's mother, just that she was not the wife of the sultan, and that she was more than likely a peasant. This meant that Jafar was never recognized as the son of the sultan, even though he had a ring to prove it. You see, Jafar's mother, before she passed away, gave Jafar a ring that he could show to the sultan to prove that he was truly his son, which became Jafar's sole purpose. Things don't always go as they're intended to, though, and Jafar would learn the hard way that sometimes even family can be cruel. It isn't explained how, but according to Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, Jafar managed to finally get an audience with the Sultan of Agrabah, at which time he presented the ring that was supposed to prove that he belonged to the royal family. The Sultan didn't accept Jafar, though he recognized the ring and claimed that he was not his child. He did, however, keep him around and put him to work as a servant. To make matters worse, while Jafar was serving in the palace, the Sultan's legitimate son, Mirza, antagonized him as often as he could. Now, if that was the extent of the hardships that Jafar faced during his childhood, I'd say it could be worse, but that was only the beginning for the future sorcerer. It wouldn't be long before Jafar discovered the true extent that his father would go to shroud his illegitimate son's lineage from the world. It was explained in the spin-off series that Jafar remained a servant for the Sultan and the rest of the palace until he made a crucial mistake. A mistake that could have, and in fact did, briefly end Jafar's young life. You see, while Jafar was out in public with the Sultan and his guards, the noble's son nearly spoke out of terms and even almost referred to him as father. And because he didn't want his kingdom to know that he had a son with a woman who was not his wife and that there was another potential heir to the throne, the Sultan took this mistake way too seriously. And if Jafar's life hadn't already been tragic enough, the young servant was about to hit rock bottom. In Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, it was revealed that after Jafar almost called the Sultan father, the Sultan waited until later to exact his punishment. And it turned out that he had the harshest form of punishment in mind for his illegitimate heir. The Sultan took Jafar, and instead of giving him a warning or a talking to, like a normal human being would, he decided that the only way to keep Jafar from spilling that they were related was to kill him. So while Jafar surely tried to fight for his life, the Sultan, his own father, drowned him. And once the job was done, and he was sure that his son was dead, the Sultan had his guards dump Jafar's body outside of the kingdom. That wasn't the end though, and according to the show, the young future sorcerer somehow came back to life. Only this time, he wasn't going to waste it on a father who made him miserable. Or at least, not in the the same way he did before. While it wasn't expressly stated in the Once Upon a Time spin-off, considering their connection after Jafar miraculously came back to life, it's been implied online that another powerful sorceress named Amara was responsible for bringing Jafar back. Once Upon a Time in Wonderland introduced Amara, who, like Jafar, had a tragic origin. She was once a mother to 3 children who lived in a house that was filled with serpent-themed decorations. However, one day their house caught fire and burned to the ground with Amara in it, leaving her badly burned. And in order to save her, Amara's 3 sons took magical water from the Well of Wonders, despite being warned by the well's guardian not to take it. Though they were able to heal their mother, Neeks ended up following them home and turned the 3 children into genies, separating them from their mother and each other forever. And according to the show, it was at that point in her life that Amara turned to sorcery and began studying dark magic, the same dark magic that would end up benefiting Jafar in his otherwise dark and dreary life. In Once Upon a Time, they showed that Jafar ended up forming a relationship with Amara, who was happy to teach her new friend the art of sorcery. Little did she know that her own abilities would be used against her in a twisted manner by her new pupil. You see, after Jafar learned about genies, he also learned that using the right spell, he could become as powerful as a genie himself. And at that point in time, the only thing on the young sorcerer's mind was revenge against his father. And in order for that to happen, he had to make sure that he was the most powerful being in the world. This meant getting rid of the competition, which included his mentor, Amara. There is no telling what could have happened had Jafar just settled with being happy within his relationship. But instead, he remained driven by his tragic past and his father who caused it all. The moment that Jafar saw the opportunity to do so in Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, he took out Amara by transforming his mentor into the serpent staff, which ended up becoming almost as iconic as Jafar himself. This was a huge reveal in itself, because it sort of explained why Jafar's staff was so powerful, and how he got his hands on it in the first place. And after he became the most powerful sorcerer in Agrabah, all that Jafar had left to do was plot his revenge on the very man who made his life so miserable, the Sultan. Now, interestingly enough, it's believed at first that Jafar went on to simply kill his father, but the reality behind the situation was actually far darker, and really implied that Jafar had some unhinged daddy issues. The ABC series originally may have implied that once Jafar mastered the art of dark magic, that he simply went on to kill his father, at which point a new Sultan stepped in. This, of course, was the Sultan that Disney introduced fans to in the first Aladdin film, and the same one who was Jasmine's father. And while Jafar became the new Sultan's royal vizier, the show also revealed that he kept a seemingly random person prisoner within his lair, which was located behind his bedroom wall. And in a really interesting twist, the old prisoner turned out to be the former Sultan himself. That's right, instead of Jafar simply killing his father, he decided to keep him prisoner. And the sorcerer's reasoning for doing so is beyond indicative of Jafar's depressing history with his father. Fans just about lost it when Once Upon a Time in Wonderland explained that the only reason that Jafar kept his father alive was to hear the old Sultan refer to him as son. That was literally all he wanted, but his father refused to do so. In fact, it was even shown that the Sultan attempted to kill himself while in captivity by jumping into the bottomless pit that was in Jafar's lair. But Jafar prevented his father's suicide using the magic carpet and continued to keep him prisoner until his father once and for all called him his son, which was something that would never end up happening. After learning about Jafar's relationship with his real father, how do you feel about Agrabah's deadliest antagonist? Make sure you let us know in the comments down below.